Yes, I just want to say before I start that my business is, I teach Hasidus. I have a website, and I found a customer here. My website is called InsideHasidus.org. If anybody understands English, has any interest in learning Hasidus, I'll leave a few of my cards here. I'd love for you to take them. Check me out. Okay, that's what I do. I teach Hasidus. How do I say this? People always ask me, Rabbi, how do you prepare for a speech? And the answer is that when I'm done speaking, I know what I was supposed to say. You talk to people, and as you talk to people, you get to know the people, and then you try to kind of figure out what other people needed to hear. So I prepared a speech. I have notes. I prepared a speech. But I'm going to give you a speech that's not in this paper, that I hope will be the one that I need to give to you. There's a Jew, a very famous man, Elie Wiesel. You know who Elie Wiesel is? He was a Holocaust survivor. He was an incredibly gifted writer and author. He was really the first survivor to actually write about the Holocaust many years after the war. And Elie Wiesel, when he was a boy, was a very religious Hasidic boy who lived on a very high spiritual level. And he came out of the war obviously traumatized, destroyed. He would say that he did not stop being religious because he didn't believe in God. He stopped being religious because he did believe in God. Wow. And he would say that the Nazis killed his God. That's what he would say. Anyways, his story of, I don't know that much about Elie Wiesel, but a little bit that I know is that over the course of his life, he evolved. He had a certain curve. And towards the end of his life was much more bright. His world was not as dark as it was earlier. And one of the most important contributors to this evolution was the Rebbe. He met the Rebbe in the early 1960s because he was a writer in a Yiddish paper. And he knew a Yiddish writer named Jacobson who was a Lubavitcher Chassid. And Gershon Jacobson said to him, you have to come and see the Rebbe. So he came to see the Rebbe. And he first saw the Rebbe in public. Before he met the Rebbe in private, he saw the Rebbe at a fabring in the public. And what he says is that I saw the Rebbe talking to a lot of people. He says, and that was enough. Because on the Rebbe's face, he saw all the tzaddas of the Jewish people. On the Rebbe's face, he saw the burden the Rebbe carried. The what? The burden, the achrayas, the burden. And then he met the Rebbe in private. When he met the Rebbe in private, him and the Rebbe got into a disagreement, an argument that I think would last for decades, for many, many, many years. Amongst the aspects of the disagreement was that he told the Rebbe he's never getting married and he's not bringing Jewish children into this world.
Wow. Yeah.
He wasn't the only person. He was, you have to understand, he was a teenager during the Holocaust. He was 17. So he was at that age where he was grown up enough to have a sense of the world, but too young to have his own idea of what the world is. And the Holocaust destroyed him. It broke him. And the Rebbe argued with him. I mean, the Rebbe would say to people that if you don't bring children into the world, you're continuing what Hitler started. And the Rebbe talked to him in private, and the Rebbe wrote him a letter, and there was a whole correspondence, a whole exchange between him and the Rebbe, where the Rebbe insisted that the way to deal with the Holocaust is to move on from it, not to stay trapped in it. The end of the story was he did get married.
Wow. He did or he didn't?
He did. And he has a son. And by his wedding, the largest bouquet of flowers that he got, I'm sorry, I'm trying not to get emotional here, was from the Rebbe. The Rebbe sent him flowers for his wedding. Yeah. Okay, anyway, I want to get to a point. It's not about this. The point is that he said to the Rebbe, he said to the Rebbe, the Rebbe should teach him how to cry. And the Rebbe said to him, I'm not going to teach you how to cry. I'm going to teach you how to sing. Anyway, so he had this ongoing conversation with the Rebbe. And the essence of the conversation was that the Rebbe's whole approach was we have to go on. And we have to go on with joy and with a positive sense of the future. And his argument was, how could you put it behind you? How could you forget it? How could you let it be in the past, you know? And the Rebbe said, you have to. You have to. And I think that over the course of his life, I have a daughter who knows his books. I have a daughter who's a big reader, and she's read all of his books. So that's where I got my education from my daughter. You read his books over the course of his life, and they change. His first books are very morbid. They're very bitter. They're very dark. His first book was called The Night. Yeah. It's about the war. But over the course of his life, the Rebbe educated him. In other words, the Rebbe met this man, and the Rebbe talked to this person, and the Rebbe was able, he was a brilliant man. I mean, Elie Wiesel was an extraordinarily special person. He wasn't only a Holocaust survivor, he was incredibly intelligent, incredibly talented, and incredibly principled, and he was not afraid. I mean, he would fight with the whole world about it. And the Rebbe had this huge impact on him, a very powerful impact on him, where the Rebbe said to him, the answer to this kind of tragedy is the future, and you have to be positive, and you cannot allow yourself to allow the past to freeze us, to inhibit us, to keep us stuck. And when you listen to him talk, Elie Wiesel, however you pronounce his name, it's clear, he says it outright, that the Rebbe was able to move him. The Rebbe was actually able to move him. The Rebbe spent a lot of time with. The Rebbe was able to take a person who was so broken and move him away from here to move him to here. The Rebbe became a Rebbe in 1951. To take a position of a leader of the Jewish people in 1951 could not have been a fun job, you understand? It wasn't exactly the right time to take the job. The thing about the Rebbe is that when he took the job, he never for a moment saw himself as the Lubavitcher Rebbe. The previous Rebbe, his father-in-law, when he came to America, he felt that when he came here, he became responsible for all the Jews in the world. Certainly all the Jews in America. When the Rebbe became Rebbe, his attitude was, and it became the foundation of what Chabad is today, is that Chabad is not a movement that concerns itself with itself. Chabad is a movement that concerns itself with all the Jewish people in the world. But in 1950, this was the idea was so radical, it was so unusual, and the Rebbe didn't have any people. I mean, Lubavitch was the Lubavitcher Hasidim either came from the Soviet Union or came from the Holocaust. What did the Rebbe have? And the Rebbe set a course for himself that was extraordinarily ambitious. I mean, to undertake what the Rebbe undertook, you have to have a lot of faith. And the nature of the faith is, you're not allowed to think how it's going to work out. You have to just think that you got to do. You know, the Rebbe's our Chabad Reim, we say all the time in Yiddish, men darf ton, men darf nicht ufton. It's our job to do. What happens is God's business. To be able to have this vision, to take on the world at that time with the optimism and the vision for the future that the Rebbe had, you have to have extraordinary emunah. So much emunah, so much faith. And the nature to the faith has to be blind. What do I have to do? How it's going to work out, how it's going to end, how it's going to benefit people. I can't think about that because I'll get too depressed. You have to just work. And that's the secret. That's how the Rebbe built Lubavitch with no people, no connections, nothing. But he had this unbelievable emunah that the Eibeh Hashem, God Almighty, will give strength, and it's worked out pretty good. 70 years on, if you know what I'm saying. Anyway, but I wanted to share this with you. For the first 20 years after the Rebbe became a Rebbe, 25 years, the Rebbe used to see people in private. 3 nights a week, 2 nights a week. He would sit till the morning and people would come and talk to him. A lot of the people who came to see the Rebbe were Eli Wiesels, were broken people. And they would come to the Rebbe, and the Rebbe would talk to them, and they would walk out of the Rebbe's room like they took a shower, you understand? Like they washed it all off. I'm going to tell you, I'm sorry I'm so emotional, it's not appropriate. I'm the only man in the room, the only one crying. I just want to tell you one more story. This is a very interesting story. This story happened in the 1970s. In other words, more than 30 years after the war. There was a man living in Australia. His name was Mr. Moss. He's no longer alive. His son has told the story. Mr. Moss. Mr. Moss in the old country was a Munkach Bocher. Munkach was a Hasidus. Munkach, I don't know how much you know. A very, very strong Hasidic group in Munkach. The Munkach Rebbe was one of the great Rebbes of the pre-war world, one of the greatest people of his time. His name was Reb Chaim Eliezer Shapiro of Munkach, the Munkach Rebbe. And Mr. Moss knew the Munkach Rebbe as a teenager. He learned in his yeshiva. He survived the war. Also as an adolescent, around the same age as Eli Wiesel, maybe a little bit older. And he immigrated to Australia. And he swore to himself that he will never see the inside of a shul, ever. He came to Australia with a shirt on his back, with nothing. And he became a very, very rich man. He became incredibly, incredibly wealthy. He got married. He had a bunch of kids. I don't know how many kids. And then his wife died on top of everything else. So he had to raise his children alone. You understand? The Holocaust survivor. He had a lot of pain. But he made a lot of money. He was a very, very rich man. And then his life was ruined, Nebuch, because one of his sons went off to yeshiva. And I sat with this boy. He was here in America once, and I asked him to tell the story. I saw him tell the story on a screen, on a video, and I asked him to repeat it to me face to face. He said he lived in Sydney, and he moved to Melbourne, and Melbourne was yeshiva. This is the late 60s, early 70s. His son went to yeshiva. And his father was very upset. Because his father raised him with no Yiddishkeit at all. Nothing. No Yom Kippur, no nothing. And he went to yeshiva. And he said to me, Mr. Moss, the son, that he once came home from yeshiva, and his father, who hadn't been in a shul in 30 years, asked him what Talmudic tractate he's studying, what page of Gemara he's learning. So he told his father what page, and his father recited the entire page by heart, from memory, what he learned in Munkach in the 1930s. Now you're talking the early 70s. He remembered the Torah that he learned, but he didn't want his children to have any of it. So he came to Rabbi Groner, Olav Shalom, who was the head of the school in Melbourne. And he said, Rabbi Groner, my son doesn't belong in yeshiva, and I'm a very rich man, I'll give you a lot of money, kick him out of the yeshiva. Kick him. I don't want my son to learn yeshiva. I'll give you whatever you want. Kick him out of yeshiva. So Rabbi Groner said to him, I was sent by the Rebbe from New York to Melbourne to make a yeshiva. My purpose is to keep Bachim in yeshiva. I appreciate your money, but I'm not going to kick him out of yeshiva. So Mr. Moss decided that he's going to travel to New York. He's going to meet the Rebbe, and he's going to give the Rebbe a lot of money and get his son out of the yeshiva. If it's not going to work with Rabbi Groner, let Rabbi Groner's boss. To make a long story short, on his way to New York, he stops in Paris. Must have flown through Israel. This goes back to early 70s. He was a personal friend of Menachem Begin. But this is before Begin was prime minister. Begin was still in the opposition. But it was before he was prime minister. He was part of the opposition. For the first 35 years, Israel was single-party rule. It was all, whatever they called it then. It was the left. Begin was always part of the opposition. Begin was really a firm person. Begin kept Shabbos, ate kosher. And Mr. Moss met him in Paris. And Begin asked him where he's going to eat Friday night. Shabbat. Yeah. He says, I have no place to go. He says, come with me to my hotel. And he had to walk 2 miles. Because Mr. Begin wouldn't drive in a car. Mr. Moss wasn't used to walking 2 miles through a hot street. And he asked Menachem Begin, which Jew in the post-Holocaust world does he respect the most? And Menachem Begin told him the Lubavitcher Rebbe. Now he's on his way to New York to meet the Lubavitcher Rebbe, to get his son out of the Lubavitcher Rebbe yeshiva. And Menachem Begin tells him that the person in the world he respects most is the Lubavitcher Rebbe. So he says, why? Who's the Lubavitcher Rebbe? So he said the Lubavitcher Rebbe taught the Jewish people how to live again. Yeah. How to live again. Anyway, so he comes to New York, Mr. Moss. But he came with a recommendation, you understand? He came, he knew already that the Rebbe is not some little kid that he's going to play over, a rabbi with a beard and to give him a check. He went into the Rebbe, and the Rebbe asked him to sit. So he said to the Rebbe, I was in Munkach. The Munkach is a city. And Munkach was a big Rebbe. He says, by a Rebbe you don't sit. He tells the Rebbe, by a Rebbe you don't sit. So the Rebbe says to him, if you're not going to sit, I'm not going to sit. And they stood. They stood the whole time. And he didn't get a chance to even ask why he came. He came to get his son out of the yeshiva. And the Rebbe says to him, tell me about Munkach. Tell me about the yeshiva. The Rebbe revered his Rebbe. Our Rebbe held of the Munkach Rebbe incredibly. I mean, one of the few people that I would quote all the time was his Rebbe, the Mechas Alazar. So the Rebbe starts asking him about the yeshiva and about the schedule and what they learned and what they did on the weekends, what they did in vacation. The Rebbe asked him many, many questions about the yeshiva. And slowly, without him realizing it, he talked him towards the war. The Munkach Rebbe passed away in 36. The Munkach Rebbe passed away before the war. So he knew the Munkach Rebbe before. He passed away in 1936. The war was 41, 40. I mean, he was hungry. It was a little bit later. And the Rebbe slowly got him to the war. And what happened next? And this man hadn't spoken about the war his entire life. He never said a word about his experience. And the Rebbe slowly got him talking about the war and where he was and where they ran and how they hid and when the Nazis took over Hungary and how he survived. And the Rebbe got to talk about something he hadn't spoken about probably in 35 years. And at some point, the volcano erupted, you know. For the first time, this man let it out. And he started to cry uncontrollably. The Rebbe came out from behind his desk and he embraced him. When he was leaving the Rebbe's room, the Rebbe said to him, whatever he called him, I don't know his name. He said to him in Yiddish, he said to him, it'll be good. It was 30 years after the war. It was many, many years after. It'll be good. It'll be good. Anyway, he never asked his son to leave the yeshiva. The question never came up. He forgot the question. But I want to tell you why. I'm not telling the stories to show you that I know how to cry. It's not my favorite thing. I'm telling you the stories I want to make. I want to explain something to the Rebbe. That's very, very important. And it's also very practical and also it's a challenge. If you have to define Chassidus, the Rebbe, and the truth of the matter is, if you want to define religion, what it means to live in God's world, rather than, God forbid, to live in a godless world, one of the most simple ways of defining what the Rebbe is, what Chassidus is, what Yiddishkeit is, what faith is optimism. Optimism. Little kids all are very optimistic. You know? As they get bigger and bigger and bigger, it becomes harder and harder and harder. You know, you watch 2-year-olds run around. Every 2-year-old is having the time of his life. By the time they're 4 or 5, they're not all so happy. You know, but most of them are, yeah? By the time they're 7 or 8, they bullied each other, you understand? It becomes more and more difficult. And over the course of our youth, we lose our faith, our optimism, our joy of living, and replace it sometimes, for lack of words, almost with a defensiveness, with I have to survive. You know, the world around me is going to be mean to me. The world around me could hurt me. And certainly as we go off into adulthood, this is what happens. You know, this is what happens to grown-ups. Grown-ups become what they call realistic. And realism is very, very often not just pessimistic, it's defensive. You know the difference between the word living and surviving? Every human being wakes up every morning, has to ask himself a simple question. Do I live or do I survive? Animals survive. Animals survive. And they're pretty happy, by the way. Animals are pretty happy. Yeah? Human beings are supposed to live. But it's hard. Faith is optimism. Faith is, you could be grown up and you could be very smart and you could be fully informed. You can know what's going on. Meaning you have a real sense of the tragedy that's a part of life, the difficulties and the pain and all the rest. I mean, we're Jewish people. We're living in the middle of a war. We are living in the middle of a war. Arguably the most difficult time since the birth of the modern state of Israel. It's unbelievable what's going on and how long it's going on for. And a connection to God gives you the strength to be positive. And positive isn't naive. Positive is not foolish. Positive is living. And any man who met the Rebbe, any woman who met the Rebbe, any child who met the Rebbe was and is a contagion of optimism.
She has a question.
But you have to talk.
The Rebbe also used to have heard women also.
Yeah.
Their problems.
Of
like,
course.
Yes, I know.
Una audiencia personal.
Sí, yeah, but like very personal.
Yeah. Sure.
Not only give $1.
No. In the later years, the Rebbe never made any discrimination. When the Rebbe met people in private, he met everybody. Men, women. When the Rebbe didn't have time to meet everybody, he didn't meet anybody. And that's when he started giving dollars. When there were so many people and there wasn't enough time. But for 25 years, the Rebbe met people in private, men and women. The Rebbe was in Paris. The Rebbe was in Paris when the Nazis occupied Paris. And he ran to the south of France. And the Frida never brought him. He came here in 41. He didn't spend the whole war in Europe. But he was in Paris when the Nazis occupied Paris. I don't think that Rebbe would ever consider himself a survivor of anything. But Rebbe was a liver. He wasn't a survivor. But he lost a brother. He lost a brother.
That was very important what you said. The Rebbe was a liver,
not a survivor.
That's very important.
The thing that's interesting about the Rebbe is, that every single day the Rebbe got tons of bad news. Every day. Whenever people had problems, he was the address. Even now, you have a problem, you get on a plane from Panama and you go to the oil and you leave your problems. The Rebbe's secretary told me that the Rebbe got 400 letters a day. 400 letters a day. And he opened every letter himself. He didn't necessarily answer all the letters, but he read every letter. And usually people did not tell the Rebbe, hi, my family is fine, and my husband is fine, and my wife is fine, and everything was good. Everybody forgot about him. The Rebbe used to say, I have what's called tzoros chassidim. Chassidim shel tzarot. When there's problems, everybody writes to me. As soon as the problems pass, everybody forgets. It's true. It's really true. And the Rebbe's spirit you couldn't break. The Rebbe's spirit you couldn't break. He prayed for people. He answered people. He directed people.
So the problem used to resolve.
Every situation was different. Sometimes like this, sometimes like this. Sometimes there was a miracle. Sometimes it was not. It wasn't 100%. It wasn't simple. Every person was different. The Rebbe corresponded to people in very different ways. To do what the Rebbe does, you have to be a Rebbe. You can't. It's not a position that you can fill. So some people wrote the Rebbe's letters, and they had miracles. Other people didn't. Why? I don't know. It's his business. But he heard all of this pain, you understand, every day. And the simple truth of the matter is, when you're connected to God Almighty, you draw strength from that, you see. Let me give it to you from a little bit of a psychological angle. You know, people in the 19th century, in the 1800s, there was a whole movement against God, right? For whatever reason, it doesn't really make sense. Marxism, which is an economic system, it's a business system, decided that one of the enemies of the people is God. You got to kill God along with the Kaiser, with the Tsar, for some reason. And they coined the phrase that religion is the opium of the masses. That you keep people intoxicated, you keep people drunk with religion. And if you look at the world today, you see a very simple truth. That faith is hard. Faith is hard. It's not easy. To be a believer takes courage. It's not weakness at all. It's not a drug. It's keeping your eyes open. And in spite of the realities of the world, having a positive sense of what life is. The Rebbe gave this and gives this to millions of people. In a real way. Anybody who met the Rebbe got an injection of joy and a kick in the bats. I want you to know something. I'm assuming that most of you never met the Rebbe, right? You met the Rebbe. Yeah, and most of you never met the Rebbe. And you see his picture. You met the Rebbe? You see his picture and you hear his stories, and the Rebbe is like this very holy man who was a very nice person. I grew up around the Rebbe. The Rebbe was never ever happy. No matter what you did wasn't enough. But at the same time, he never ever said what happened yesterday. It was always what's going to be tomorrow. This unusual combination of demanding and demanding and demanding and demanding and demanding and always having tomorrow will be better. Tomorrow will be better. Tomorrow. He never stopped. It's remarkable. People used to come to the Rebbe, ask him advice, not listen to him, and it would make a mess. And they'd come back, and the Rebbe wouldn't say, you know, it's your fault you didn't listen. Say, okay, now you'll listen and it'll be good. And you didn't listen again, and it got worse, and he came back the next day, and it never got to a point where he said, don't come anymore. So it's always tomorrow, tomorrow. So the Rebbe's, it's a tzaddik, a holy man, it's deeply connected to Hashem, gives us his connection to Hashem. This connection has an indefatigable, an unbreakable positivity. Joy, the strength to do real things, to do good things, to make changes in the world. But at the same time, there was a tviyah, there was a demand that we have to grow, we have to move from year to year, that we have to change ourselves, we have to become better, we have to grow as people, as a community, as a world. And I don't know why you came here, but this is what you're looking for. You all traveled from Panama to Brooklyn. It's a long trip. And maybe somebody convinced you to take this trip. And you're going to be by the Rebbe. You're going to go to the oil, be by the Rebbe. And if you came here and you're going to go to the oil, it's only because you believe in the immortality of the neshama. Right? The soul is forever. The neshama is forever. And when you go to the oil, everybody is going to have a different experience. Some of you are going to feel it more. Some of you are going to feel it less. But your neshama and the Rebbe's neshama are going to touch. It's a spiritual meeting. Your neshama and the Rebbe's neshama are going to touch. And the electricity that's going to go through you as a result of that meeting is to give you courage, to give you strength, to look at your world in a more illuminated way. Not in a naive way, but in a way that encourages you to make it better. In a way that encourages you to, no matter what it is, it has to be more. And it's not going to come from guilt, and it's not going to come from fear. It's not going to come from negativity. It's going to come from joy. This is what happens when you meet the Rebbe. And people come from the whole world now. So many years after Gimel Tammuz. This summer is 30 years. And they're not coming because it's a historic site. You understand? Nobody is coming for nostalgia. People come here and they go to the Rebbe because it's a real meeting of a soul and a soul. A neshama and a neshama, even if there's no words exchanged. And the Rebbe gives each person life and strength to move forward and to do things in a positive way. I want you to know, my wife and I, today is Monday. My wife and I was yesterday. We go quite often. We also have our complaints and our worries. Everybody comes. We have problems. You run to the aisle. We live in Brooklyn, so we run to the aisle once a week. And we all come with our list. You know, I need this, and I need this, and I need this, and I need this, and this one needs health, and this one needs a job, and this one needs peace in this home, this one needs... Everybody has issues that we need. And the Rebbe listens to all of our requests. And again, I don't know how these things work. Sometimes the Rebbe gives you what you ask, sometimes it doesn't give you what you ask, sometimes it gives it to you right away, sometimes it makes you ask a few more times. I don't understand how tzaddikim work. But we should all remember, when you go to the Oyel, you should know he wants something else. He wants something else. It's not you come over there and you have your, I need this, and he's a nice man. The Rebbe is a very, very nice man. He's unconditional in his love. But you have to understand that the Rebbe, what is the Rebbe gave us himself. The Rebbe gave us himself completely. And what was he? What was he? He was another mitzvah. He was kosher. He was Shabbos. He was Tarat HaMishpacha. He was a Jewish child. He was giving a Jewish child a Jewish education. That's what he lived for. His optimism was in the belief that we'll be more Jewish. His optimism was, and you have to understand this, the more Jewish we'll be, the better our lives will be materially, physically. When we do more mitzvahs, we have more beracha. When a Jew is closer to God, his life or her life is better. Being Orthodox, being frum is a challenge, it's a lot. But it's the nature of the Jew. It's the nature of the Jew, and it makes our lives better. And that's all the Rebbe wants. When we come with our laundry list of stuff, it's not a bad idea to say to the Rebbe, this is what I'm going to give you. It's not a bribe. It's only fair. It's only fair. We're all coming from all over the world. We come and we stand and we read whatever we read, however we do it, they're going to explain to you what you do when you go to the oil. It's a meeting of a soul and a soul. You understand? A neshama and a neshama. Nobody goes to the oil because there was once a Rebbe. We go to the Rebbe now. Unfortunately, the situation is you can't look into his eyes. So you go to the oil, you go to his grave, and your soul and his soul touch. They touch. And this is very meaningful to people. And people leave their pain there. People come and ask for all kinds of good things. And oftentimes the brachas that they want, they get. But I think it's important for us to appreciate what he wants. He wants to be more Jewish. And he wants us to understand that a mitzvah is not something that's meant to control us and make our life harder. But this is the meaning of life. This is the meaning of life. The meaning of life is to live on a higher level. And this higher level for a Jew is to be more connected to Kadosh Baruch Hu, more connected to God. And our connection to God is through mitzvahs, through good deeds that we do as they're written in the Torah. I'm going to share with you another story. It's a very famous story. There's a man whose name is Mr. Lasky, and he's told the story many, many times. If you watch Gem, you have Gem in
Yes.
so you've sure seen this. This Mr. Lasky grew up in a frum home. Mr. Lasky's parents were survivors of the Holocaust. He grew up in a religious home, went to yeshiva his whole life, had a terrible time in school. And when he left high school and he went off to college, he dropped the whole business. He became completely secular. But in the campus, the school that he went to was a Chabad rabbi. This story happened more than 50 years ago. More than 50 years ago, you didn't have Chabad on campus. You understand? There was 3 Chabad rabbis on campus in the whole world. And one of them happened to be the State University of New York in Buffalo. And he became friends with Rabbi Garari's older son. He was the shliach to Buffalo University, the State University of New York in Buffalo. Rabbi Garari's a tzaddik. He's a very holy Jew. And the Rebbe sent him off to sit with college students. It was quite an interesting shidduch between such a big chassid and regular college kids in the early 1970s. And he spoke Yiddish. He came from a Yiddish-speaking home. But no mitzvahs. No mitzvot, no Shabbat, no tefillin, no nothing. And Rabbi Garari knew that him and Mr. Lasky are buddies, they're friends, but he can't talk about religion, anything else, yeah? And he got involved, this Mr. Lasky, with a band, a famous band. He met a man in this work with the band, who became a Jewish guy, became a Buddhist. And he got a fabrengen about Buddhism, he got a fabrengen about being a Buddhist. There's a lot of Jew booze, I don't know if you know, it's a popular alternative, unfortunately. And he says he was talking to this Buddhist about the whole belief, and he had an epiphany. His neshama woke up. So he calls up Rabbi Garari, his old friend, and he starts asking him questions. But he didn't ask one question, he asked 100 questions. He was hyperventilating. And Rabbi Garari understood that he wasn't asking questions because he needed answers. There was something going on inside that you answer one, you have 10 questions. There was a turmoil, something. So he says to him, to this Mr. Lasky, he says, I can't help you. The only person who can help you is the Lubavitcher Rebbe. He said, if you're going to make an appointment, you're going to have to wait 6 months to see him. So here's what I want you to do. I want you to go to 770, and I want you to stop him on the sidewalk and talk to him. And he sent somebody to show Mr. Lasky who the Rebbe is. And he waited in front of 770. It was freezing cold. It was in February. It was very, very cold. It wasn't Panama. It was New York. And the Rebbe's walking into 770. And he walks up to the Rebbe. He starts talking to the Rebbe in Yiddish. And he asks the Rebbe, are you the Lubavitcher Rebbe? So the Rebbe says to him, what is your name and where are you from? He didn't say yes, but it was kind of obvious. So he tells the Rebbe who he is. He says to the Rebbe, can I ask the Rebbe a question? He says, ask. He says, when the Rebbe's eyes touched his, if you ever saw the video, he always talks about the Rebbe's eyes. I saw the Rebbe's eyes. The Rebbe's eyes were fire. Fire. You couldn't look in the Rebbe's eyes. The Rebbe's eyes were like they were literally fire. They burnt a hole in your head. When you looked at the Rebbe's eyes, you had to look away. You couldn't make eye contact with the Rebbe. The eyes were unbelievable. They were piercing eyes like you've never seen. And he locks eyes with the Rebbe, and they talk for 10 minutes in the freezing cold. And he asks the Rebbe, where is God? Where is God? So the Rebbe tells him, everywhere. In a tree, in a stone. So he says to the Rebbe, all in Yiddish. I know. But where? So the Rebbe tells him again. And he points to the different things that they were near. There was a gate, there was a wall. He points. And he says to the Rebbe a second time, I know, ich weiß, aber avu, I know, but where? So the Rebbe tells him finally, in Yiddish, Leut wie du fragst in dein Herz. Based on how you're asking your question, the Eibishter God is in your heart. And then he tells the Rebbe, is it okay if I talk in English? He ran out of Yiddish. And he asked the Rebbe something very powerful. Says the Rebbe, how could it be that the Jewish people are right and everybody else is wrong? That the black man is wrong and the Indian is wrong. They were the only one who were right. So the Rebbe answers him, the purpose of the black man is to actualize the essence of the black man. The purpose of the Indian is to actualize the essence of the Indian. And the purpose of the Jew is to connect to God through the actionable, behavioral performance of Torah and mitzvahs. So so this is what he told him. The Rebbe talked to him for like 10 minutes, and the Rebbe told him to put film on every day. The Rebbe told him to learn. He said for 3 months he didn't do anything, but now he had religious children. He became a religious. It took a while, but the Rebbe's words percolated. But I want to talk to you about this statement. He said to the Rebbe, how could everybody else be wrong and we're right? And the Rebbe said, no, they're right too. There's more than one truth. But listen very carefully, please. There's more than one truth. But the truth is not in the mind. The truth is in the soul. Your intellect, your mind, is a tool that can judge what you tell him to judge. But the mind does not have a conscience. The mind is not an essence. The mind is not a truth. The neshama is, the soul is. So the Rebbe says a man has an essence. If he covers over that essence with his mind, he'll never fulfill his purpose and he'll never be happy. If he doesn't cover over that essence with his mind or with stupidity, and he gives voice to that essence, he'll find his purpose and he'll be happy. So wait, so everybody has a different essence. So there's more than the essence of one person is different than another person's, and therefore there could be more than one truth. But for a Jew, the essence is mitzvahs. For a Jew, the essence, this is what the Rebbe said to him. There's more than one truth. The black man could be right, and the Indian could be right, and the African can be right, and the European can be right, and the Asian can be right, and the Australian can be right. There could be more than one truth, but one thing is for sure, the truth doesn't come from here, it comes from here. You have to give voice to your soul. And in a Jew, that's mitzvah. A Jew wants to express what he is, or she is, and find peace and happiness and purpose. You have to do mitzvah, to do practical mitzvahs, what the Rebbe told him. And this is what the Rebbe is. He's a torch, a beacon of truth. He's a torch and a beacon of optimism, of positivity and joy. And he stands for Yiddishkeit. He stands for more mitzvahs. He stands for more Torah. And not just because he believes that God wants this. Because he believes this is what makes people happy. See, I live in America, you live in Panama. So Panama is probably a very normal country. America is a crazy place. And we're living in a very interesting time. The world today, certainly the Western world, is richer than it ever was. The world today is so much more informed. We have so much information. A child knows more than kings knew. Kings and queens knew 150 years ago. Any child, there's so much. We are so information rich. And materially, we're very comfortable. And we're not happy.
That's why.
We're not happy. There's a couple of components to it. One component is that we've relegated optimism to childishness, to naivete. We've defined people, look at the world as positive, as being stupid. You know, if you're a smart person, you have to be miserable. And the smarter you are, the more miserable you have to be. It's called realism, you understand? And we're trying very, very, very hard to replace our soul with our mind. We're trying to trade in our neshama for our smarts. We're very smart. We're very, very, very smart.
But that's a trick of the Yitzhak.
It's a trick of the Yitzhak. Yeah. Moyach Shalat Alev only works if you follow what the neshama says. Not if you ask the neshama what he thinks. The seichel what he thinks. We're trying to trade in the spiritual definition of human being for the intellectual definition. We think that the greatest thing about a person is how smart he is, and it's not true. The greatest thing about a person is how much of a conscience he has inside. A conscience. How do you try and say conscience in Spanish? Conciencia. Okay, did I say it correctly? Conciencia. The truth of a person is in his conscience. That's his neshama.
Rabbi, we can stay here like 2 more weeks. We teach you Spanish.
I appreciate that.
Every day we teach Spanish.
Okay.
Conscience in Spanish is a feminine word.
It's a what?
It's a feminine word. Conciencia, la conciencia.
And how do you say it? The masculine men have no conscience in Spanish. Not in Panama. And this is what the Rebbe is. This is what the Rebbe is. I just want to tell you something else. I want to tell you something else. Like I said, I prepared a speech, but if you look at my notes, you'll see I didn't give the speech I prepared. But that's how it always is. You walk into a room, you feel people. No, you feel people. You have to talk to the people. I prepared a speech, but I walked in. I have to talk to you. I want to tell you something. Last week was Lag BaOmer, right? Everybody knows what Lag BaOmer is. Yeah. People know what Lag BaOmer is. Lag BaOmer was a week ago Sunday. Lag BaOmer is the yard site, is the day of the passing of a very holy man who lived 1,800 years ago. His name was Reb Shimon Bar Yochai. He was the author of the Zohar. And all over the world, on Lag BaOmer, people get together, they make a fire in the middle of the night, and they sing songs and they dance and they're happy. Why? You ever met him? Did you ever meet Reb Shimon Bar Yochai? He spent 13 years in a cave with no clothes. He had one shirt, one pair of pants, so he'd take off his clothes and he would cover himself till his neck in sand. And when he would pray, he would put on his clothes and take them off because he didn't want the clothes to get worn out. You understand? He lived with his son in a cave for 13 years. They ate carob. You know what carob is? Carob is good for 1 day a year. And water for 13 years. Yeah, for Lag BaOmer, for Tu B'Shvat, Chamish B'Shvat. What do we have in common? What do we have in common? What do we have in common with such a holy person? We have nothing in common with him. If you would meet Reb Shimon Bar Yochai, he would understand your problems. I mean, he probably would, but he doesn't live in our world. The things that bother us don't bother him. The things that are important to us are not important to him. He's a man who's so deeply connected to God. His whole world is God. And everybody feels kin. We feel connected to Reb Shimon Bar Yochai. Why is that? Why is that? And the answer to the question is, because there's a lot of levels of holy people. Some holy people frighten people away, understand? You see them, they run away. They're the nervous, angry ones, you understand? Some holy people you cannot relate to. The holiest of the holy, we all feel connected to. Not because we understand. Not because we understand. But because in the deepest place in our neshama, we know that this person represents a truth which we have here. If you think about Lag BaOmer, it's a very funny holiday. There's no holiday like it. All Jews in the world make a big deal out of Lag BaOmer. What happened? Reb Shimon Bar Yochai passed away. So what? What are you making a fire in the middle of the night and singing songs? The answer is people connect to him. If you ask the average person, you know what he did? Do you know when he lived? I don't know. I just know this is a good day, a good guy. What connects people to such a person? The people who were the most deeply connected to God, the furthest away from our level. We just have a sense that we share something. We have a bonding with these people. And as much as they're different than us, we're not afraid of them. We don't feel estranged by them. We don't feel disconnected, feel very deeply bonded. And the Rebbe is that kind of a man. The Rebbe himself, in his own life, lived in a different world. His connection to God, his worship, his prayer, his Torah, his life was a life of pure holiness. And we all feel, you took a trip from Panama to New York to meet the Rebbe. What do you have to do with the Rebbe? The answer is that someplace very deep in your neshama, very deep in your soul, in your conscientious soul, however you say it in feminine, you know that this person and you have a bonding. It's not reasonable. You can't explain it. It's much deeper. It's much, much deeper. It's much, much deeper. And it speaks to the truth of a Jew. We're all complicated people. We're all intelligent people. We're complicated people. We're dynamic people. We're individual people. And some things just bind us. Some things are so simple. They're so transcendent that we all somehow appreciate that we share this. And the Rebbe is such a person. The Rebbe is such a person. He was incredibly holy, unbelievably holy, and very, very deeply connected to each person. He is very holy, and he's very deeply connected to each person. And he wants the best for us. But the best for us is that we shouldn't ever allow ourselves to become negative and pessimistic and to say that we're realistic, you understand? He understands and he appreciates that for us to be happy, we need to be close to God. We need to be close to Hashem. We need to be close to God, which means we need to do mitzvahs. I teach for a living. That's what I do. And like I said, I left a few cards. If anybody wants to take these cards, please, it'll be my pleasure to visit me online. Today, I was sitting with a group of girls. I teach one of the schools I teach is the girls. And one of the girls asked me a question. Okay, let me finish the question before you translate it. Okay, let me finish the question. A girl wrote me on a note. She's 20 years old. She's a college girl. From girl. If the Rebbe had the Ruach HaKodesh, if the Rebbe had a clairvoyance, if the Rebbe could see what nobody else could see. Wait, well, let me finish. When I finish, you'll translate. When I finish, translate. The Rebbe certainly saw everybody's pain. He saw the trauma. He saw the abuse. He saw the pain. So why didn't he just use his special powers to heal it and save everybody all their problems? A 20-year-old girl asked me this question. If the Rebbe had special powers and he could see everybody's pain, why didn't he just heal it? This was the question. So I was so shocked by the question. It was the very end of class. I did today Q&A. The girls took turns asking questions. It was literally 1 minute left of the class. I didn't have time to answer. It's a very hard question to answer. I mean, part of the answer is the Rebbe is not God, you understand? You can take that up with God. But I said to her, the Rebbe saw so much pain, so much suffering. He knew the suffering and the pain of us more than we do. The Rebbe could not afford to define himself by all the pain and the suffering that he saw. He had to define himself by the possibility of it being better, or he couldn't be a Rebbe. You understand? The Rebbe could not afford to allow that pain to define his role. The Rebbe became a Rebbe. He started everything new. Everything was forward, not back. The Rebbe never looked back, always looked forward, never looked back.
So what's the answer? Sorry.
I said to this girl, I said to her, the Rebbe saw so much pain that the only way that Rebbe could deal with all that pain is by being positive.
By being positive.
Yeah.
Was he able to change the situation of the person of pain? Was he able to change it or not?
Maybe yes, maybe no. Maybe yes, but the Rebbe, you know, let me ask you a question, okay? Let me ask you a question. If everybody in the world was healthy, nobody's sick. If everybody in the world was rich, if everybody in the world had children and had a good life, what do you think the world would look like?
Boring.
Like perfect.
No, Mashiach without Mashiach.
Anybody else? Anybody here?
I think people will not be happy.
If everybody had everything they want, we'd be eating each other up alive. We would be eating each other up alive.
We wouldn't be happy.
With jealousy.
With jealousy.
We would always find a way to look at the next person and see he has something on it. Now please, let me finish. Please, let me finish. You'll do the Spanish after. You need to understand something about people. People don't become good because their life is good. People become good because they look in the mirror and they make themselves good. Problems are not, you don't take problems away. Problems have to heal from the inside. People came to the Rebbe with problems. The Rebbe very often taught them how to fix their own problem. You want to understand what Mashiach means? Mashiach doesn't mean we have everything we want. Mashiach means we have the wisdom to be humble.
To see the truth.
Mashiach means the wisdom to take responsibility. Mashiach is not a free ride. My kids say, how come there's so much suffering? I tell them, I promise you, the day human beings figure out how to have all the blessings in the world and be humble and be happy for somebody else, we'll have it. You must understand, God created us with a purpose. The world, last 5,000 years history, is a classroom. He created human beings, and he says, I'm going to teach you how to be human. And we make mistakes, and we make mistakes, and we make mistakes. We hurt one another, we hurt ourselves. And we're learning these lessons very, very, very slowly. But we have to learn these lessons. You don't take problems away. You take problems away with a new one.
Okay, so...
Because the problem is not things. The problem is us. You want to understand what Mashiach means. When the Rebbe says we're holy by Mashiach, he's saying that human beings are getting ready to learn the lessons of not having to have suffering in order to have kindness. Think about it. Think about it. Think about it. The Rebbe is a teacher of God's wisdom. He's not taking things away. He's teaching us what God, how to be human beings. It's a process. It's a process. We have to learn this. But as far as this conversation is concerned, if we're concerned, each person has to know that what the Rebbe wants for us is really the best for us. It's not the easiest, but it's the best.
So how can he choose which person he will help and which one not?
Oh, you want my opinion?
Yeah.
He helped anybody as much as he possibly could. The Rebbe once said, it has to do with neshamot. How come I can help you and not help you? It's up to God. If he could help, he would help, I promise you. Hey, my dear friends, I'm sorry about my Spanish. Thank you, but I just want to finish with this. You came to America and you came to Crown Heights. I grew up in Crown Heights. When I was a little kid in Crown Heights, we were all very poor. Very poor. The first time I got a new pair of clothes was to my bar mitzvah. Think about it. The first suit that my father bought me was my bar mitzvah. I wore everybody else's clothes. And all my friends did the same thing. When Crown Heights was poor, Crown Heights was beautiful. Crown Heights, Baruch Hashem, is not so poor anymore. And people don't wait till 13 to get their clothes. But Crown Heights is the Rebbe's place. And there's a lot of beauty here. There's a lot of beauty here. I give you each a bracha that from this trip, You should go to the Rebbe. You should connect to the Rebbe. And you should take from Crown Heights the beauty of Crown Heights. The story that they tell about two Hasidim who came to a Rebbe. And the Rebbe asked them, they came from the same place. From the city of Odessa. What's going on in Odessa? So one tells the Rebbe, in Odessa, there's people learning, there's people davening, people are doing mitzvahs, people are being very righteous. And the Rebbe gave him 20 rubles. The next chassid walks in. Wait, he walks out of the Rebbe and his friend says, what happened? He said, the Rebbe asked me what's going on in Odessa, and I told him that people are learning and people are davening, and the Rebbe gave me 20 rubles. He said, but you lied through your teeth. There's all kinds of Naddishkeit going on in Odessa. And when he walked into the Rebbe, and the Rebbe asked, oh, he told the Rebbe, there's people who are wasting time, people don't go to shul, people talk Lashon Hara, and the Rebbe gave him 50 cents. He says, wait a minute, I told you the truth and I get 50 cents. He told you a lie, I get $20. So the Rebbe said to him these words, I know what's going on in Odessa. I want to know which Odessa you live. Okay. Okay, it was nice to meet you all. Gute Nacht. Yeah, besur ist